Greetings, YouTube. I recently had a request for a video on weapon bans. I believe the person was referring to personal weapons like firearms and melee weapons, and not referring to things like nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, which I think should be unilaterally banned everywhere. No nation needs those. I'm a person that's opposed to the concepts of total war. But when it comes to personal devices, such as firearms and melee weapons, I'm not a supporter of bans. Now, I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment rights of Americans to own firearms, and I feel that every law-abiding American should have the right to purchase firearms. And I'm opposed to laws that block people's access to that. But I'm also opposed to some of the strange bans that you see on hand weapons. For example, nunchucks, the classic, chucks used by Bruce Lee, are restricted in some areas of the United States, and yet baseball bats aren't. You can find baseball bats at every sporting goods store, Target, Walmart, Kmart, anywhere. Bats are everywhere. And I bet if you were going to look at the number of people harmed by nunchucks compared to the number of people harmed by baseball bats in America, baseball bats are going to win on that. And if you were to look at the number of people who harmed themselves with a baseball bat or a pair of nunchucks, I bet more people have harmed themselves with nunchucks. I've seen what people can do to themselves with chucks. It isn't pretty. But I'm also opposed to bans on such things as knives. I carry a knife every day, and I have for 35 years. And whenever I have to use a knife because someone says, I need to cut something, or I can't get this package open, and I take my knife out and I do it for them, a lot of the time they'll look at me and say, why do you carry a knife? And which is when I look at them and say, well, why don't you carry a knife? You obviously need one. You're just lucky that I happen to be here. I personally think that everyone should carry one. The most useful tool in the entire tool chest of humanity. It's the original true tool. And I think it's universally helpful, which is why I carry one every day. I also carry a flashlight and a multi-tool because they're useful every day. But here's the thing about weapon bans. Whether they're on firearms, or nunchucks, or on knives, weapon bans only work on law-abiding citizens. Yeah, I know you're going to say, duh, but that apparently doesn't seem to occur to the voting Americans, nor to the legislatures that put up these laws to be voted upon. If you are a law-abiding citizen, you will obey the weapon bans, which means you can be trusted with weapons. You're a law-abiding person. You're just the kind of person that we don't need to place weapon bans on. And if a person is a criminal or a potential criminal, and they've taken the step of saying, I don't care if there's a ban on this device, I'm going to use it regardless, then all the laws in the world aren't going to stop them. And therein lies the paradox for weapon bans. They only work on people who can be trusted to have weapons, and they have no effect whatsoever on people who can't be trusted with weapons. So why do we have them? I am baffled. I have been baffled about this for decades. It has never made any sense to me. It continues to make no sense to me. All it does is mean that innocent people who can be trusted with weapons could potentially be arrested for having a device on them which could be a useful tool. And yes, I consider firearms to be useful tools. They're unitaskers. They're only good at one thing, but it doesn't mean they're not useful tools. And if you need a firearm and you don't have a firearm, there isn't any real replacement for that tool. But most of the time in America, people are given hassles for carrying knives. Thankfully, in my state of New Hampshire, you can carry any kind of blade you want under 4 inches so long as it isn't a switchblade. Though I believe you can carry a switchblade if you are handicapped in some degree. It's just like some different, like if you have one hand, or if you have some kind of motor skill issue that would prevent you from accessing a knife with 2 hands, that kind of thing. Kind of like you can't use crossbows to hunt unless you have some motor skill issues. So you can't use a bow, so then you can use a crossbow. It's kind of weird. But just a standard knife is really useful. Now, for example, United Kingdom, you can't carry any blade that's longer than 2 inches or has a locking mechanism. So you can use a friction blade knife that is under 2 inches, or 2 inches or less. I think 2 inches is the cutoff point. Now, that's still useful, but it isn't as useful or as safe as a knife that locks in place. But you can kill somebody with one of these. Talk to prison guards. They'll tell you. People have been killed with these. Screwdrivers. You can kill somebody with a screwdriver. I could pick this chair up and bludgeon someone to death if I wanted to. Everything is a weapon if you hold it right. And banning specific things from the people who can be trusted to carry them, the people following the bans, makes no sense to me. It really doesn't. So, that's my thoughts on weapon bans. I'm opposed to them. I don't think that they're useful. I think they're aimed at the wrong people. I hope that the person that made this request, whose name I forget, I apologize, this answers your question. I'm sure now I will be regaled with thoughtful comments below.